Hey guys, this is Ramon Martinez, and I'm bringing you another game from the book The Life and Games of Mikhail Tal. This is actually game 99 from his book. So I'm basically jumping from, the last video I made was game 1, and this is game 99, so I'm jumping to the very end of the book. And there's no real particular reason other than, I'm trying to find interesting games. And this game he mentions that actually won the special prize or from the tournament that he was playing. And this game was actually played in the USSR Championship in Leningrad in 1974. Tal's playing white against Dvoretsky. I probably butcher that name. I'll have it in the title of the game when I post this, but yes, forgive me if I butchered it. And I picked this game also because Tal is known for his 1e4 pretty much all of his games, but here he actually starts with d4, and we quickly head into a King's Indian defense because his opponent plays knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, e4, d6, and Tal chooses bishop e2. I mean, these are all typical moves in King's Indian defense. And if you would like to learn more about the King's Indian defense, feel free to delve into the enormous amount of theory that's out there, because this is a very difficult opening to learn and to master from either side. But yes, castle. Tal plays knight f3, e5, and bishop e3. And here he says he could have played a number of different variations. I mean, instead of bishop e3, he could have played d5 or d takes e5 or even castle, but he plays bishop e3 because he couldn't find anything else better than this. And his opponent plays c6, which I think it's an older move. I mean, I don't think this is. I think I've seen it played in some recent games, but I think most people now play either taking on d4 or something like a5 to give room for the knight to come to a6 and then b4. Hence the point of a5 to stop the a3 b4 advances anyway for the moment, right? But I think modern theory does choose something like a5 and knight a6 to come to b4, something like along those lines. Like I said, there's a ton of theory on this opening, so we'll just continue with the game. So c6. I think also instead of c6, most people play either knight b d7 or knight c6. Knight c6 usually invites d5, and then the knight from c6 goes to e7, and then you go from there. It's a slightly different game though. And here Tal castled, and black actually captured with his pawn on d4, and Tal played bishop d4. Now he did have an alternative, of course. He could have taken with knight takes d4, but he says that he didn't like the lines with rook e8, f3, d5, c takes d5, c takes d5, bishop b5, which attacks the rook, bishop d7. And he says he just didn't like this particular line of the game, so he chose instead to capture with his bishop. And here black played rook e8 anyway. Queen c2. I mean, that rook move was not just made for nothing. It was attacking the pawn on e4 twice with the help of the knight. And the queen just lends support to that pawn. And knight b d7. Now here Tal says that maybe his opponent shouldn't have rushed to make this move, that he could have tried something like queen e7 first or even c5, but this is still playable. I don't think there's anything wrong with knight bd7. And Tal played rook ad1. I mean, this is understandable. You want your rooks, semi-open files or open files. Rooks usually belong in the center. And here, black played queen e7 anyway, and rook fe1. So again, rooks most of the time belong in the center. And black played knight e5. Of course, you could have also played knight c5, but Tal states that if his opponent had played knight c5, then b4 was going to be his move. Now this seems like he loses the e4 pawn because it is attacked 1, 2, 3, 4 times and is only defended twice. So I mean, it seems like you're losing your pawn on e4 because this knight is attacked, so it's going to capture, right? But I mean, if that knight takes, first you play bishop d3, which uncovers a pin on that knight. And if d5 to try to defend, and c takes d5, c takes d5, and the point of this whole line is bishop takes f6. So that removes a defender of this e4 knight, which is pinned, and now that knight is just going to fall, and you will regain your pawn with advantage at some point. I mean, the knight can't recapture, so he has to be captured with either, most likely, the bishop. I mean, you're gonna regain the pawn. So that whole line with knight c5 and b4, you're not losing the pawn really. It's just illusory, as it says. You're gonna regain your pawn with advantage. So that's why he plays knight e5. Black plays knight e5. He didn't want to go into any of those lines because, I mean, you could have also, after b4, gone to e6, but then now bishop e3, and this leads to a complicated game, but black just didn't want to go in for that. And after knight e5, Tal plays h3, and here black played bishop h6. I mean, Tal says that he says that black plays an interesting move, bishop h6. I mean, it's hard to explain this move honestly because it's not really any purpose for it. I mean, other than maybe his opponent was trying to catch Tal off guard and make him think that this was some kind of preparation, home preparation, but I mean, it doesn't attack anything. It doesn't do anything. It's just, and we'll actually see later on that this move actually, there's a flaw to it on more than one way. But Tal just plays b4, unfazed by this bishop h6 peculiar move. Now, the point of b4 is c5 is threatened, so that's why black plays b6, trying to stop that idea. But Tal says, I'm gonna play it anyway because I don't care. You're not gonna stop me. And I mean, here you have to capture one way or the other. You can't let white capture and wreck your pawns or create issues. So black actually took with the b pawn. Now white's idea, and this is sort of like an intermediate move. This knight takes e5. These intermediate moves are something that for beginners is kind of difficult to understand and learn. I mean, I myself remember trying to figure intermediate moves even when I saw them on Grandmaster games. I was like confused by them. I didn't understand the concept of timing, and that's one aspect of chess that you need to kind of grasp before you can even understand what intermediate moves are. But and I mean, that's why I'm making these videos. I'm not making these videos for truly or very experienced players who know about all these things. I'm doing these videos mostly for intermediate to beginner players, who can also get something out of these games and hopefully enjoy them. But yes, intermediate moves difficult to teach as well. I mean, it's comes with experience, I think, and watching and reading, watching videos and reading books. I mean, that's really the only way that you can really learn this intermediate move business. But anyway, black has to capture something here, and he chose d takes e5, and Tal played bishop takes e5, which attacks the queen, so the queen had to move, and he moved to b7. Now, when I was playing through the engine, trying to figure out different variations, the engine preferred queen a4. Tal actually plays knight a4. I mean, even as a beginner, you usually taught that knights on the rim are dim. That cheeky saying. Because it's true. I mean, you don't usually want your knights on the rim because they don't have as much scope. I mean, if you think of a knight, just in a hypothetical situation on d4, it's an octopus knight, right? It controls so many different squares, whereas when it's on this rim, it's limited in scope. But Tal's idea is that he wants this knight to head to the blockading square on c5. Notice the weakness that has been created by this whole exchange of pawns after c5 was pushed by Tal. Now there's a weakness on c6. So yes, after all this business, bishop e6 played by black, finally sort of finishing his development. Tal's idea is bishop d6, which also attacks the e5 pawn. So that's why black has to move the knight to d7. And here comes the knight to that beautiful c5 square. And I mean, that knight can't be tolerated by black. It's attacking the queen, attacking the knight, attacking the bishop. It's just a monster knight. So he snapped it off. And here, you could capture with the queen, you could capture with the bishop, you could capture with the pawn. And here Tal states that there's a transformation happening here because he actually took with the b pawn. This transforms the nature of the pawn structure and cements that weakness on c6. And this weakness, it's a problem until pretty much the very end of the game. And here black played bishop f8, and queen b4 might have been another possibility, but it doesn't matter at this point. Bishop f8, that bishop has to be removed. The rook attacked the queen, so the queen returned to its sad square on d7, blockading, or not blockading, but just it's very limited in its movement, and a queen needs space. Rook ed1, putting that rook on a more active file. I mean, it's not doing anything behind the bishop here. It's done its job on the e file, so now it moves to a pretty much open file, and that bishop has to be removed. Now here you could capture with a rook, but that would lead most likely to just kind of an even game, and you have a possibility here for an advantage, and that's with pawn takes d6. Now this is a pass pawn, meaning that there's no other pawns that can stop it from advancing. That's when you have a pass pawn. You could argue that this is also a pass pawn, but it is and it's not. I mean, in fact, it is a weakness because it is way back in the black's camp, and it's defended by the queen. I mean, that's not a queen's job. Now that rook on a8 move to challenge the rook on the b file. I mean, finally, after 24 moves, that rook moved, and white actually pushed the a pawn. And Tal here states that this is another one of his trumps, that a pawn's just gonna roll down the board and become a nuisance to black, and we'll actually see that unfolding in the next several moves. Now black actually took on b1, and queen took on recaptured on b1. You can't take with a rook because then you drop the pawn on d6, and I mean you're not losing this, I don't think, but I mean it's you went from having an advantage to now you have to fight for a draw, and you don't want to do that. So that's why he's forced to capture with the queen. And the queen moves to d8, and the point of this move, you know, is to try to come to b6. If black managed to do that, then his position kind of becomes a little more stable. But Tal doesn't allow that. Now if queen b6 and rook b1, and it's just not good for him. So instead, the queen had to return to its sad square on d7, you know, that blockading job, which you never want to have a queen having to blockade a pawn. I mean, a queen is worth way more. It's demeaning to the queen. You don't want to do that, but I mean, this position, he really doesn't have a choice. And queen c5 was played by Tal, you know, just bringing the troops closer, which also attacked e5, which, you know, that's why black plays f6. And now the pawn marches up the board. King g7, rook b1. I mean, you can see things just becoming critical for black here. Rook d8, threatening to take on d6, but there's no time. a6, king h6, and he did that because rook b7 is threatening, and that would skewer the queen and the king, and you lose your queen. So that's why king h6 was played. I mean, this is just bad, but then, you know, here this is like waving a red flag to a bull. Tal sees the king exposed on h6, and boom, just goes after it, and you can't go back because of bishop or rook b7, which again would, you know, you lose your queen. So g5 kind of forced queen f3, attacking f6, which is another weakness created recently by black, so that has to be defended. Queen f7. If you try king g5 and queen h5 comes, and it's just total collapse of the black position. But here comes rook b7, black defense with rook d7, but here comes a tactical blow from Tal, and this is why I think he won a prize in the end. It's one of those moves that, you know, basically just tears the black position apart. I mean, you're being pulled from so many directions that it's impossible to maintain your position. So if you would like to figure out what that move was played by Tal here, you can pause the video and try to figure it out. Like I said, it's a tactical move, but it basically ends the game in a few moves. Okay, hopefully you pause or, you know, try to figure it out. The move played by white is bishop c4. Now, black tried playing f5, which is a clever idea, but it doesn't work. But obviously we have to look at what happens if bishop takes c4. I mean, it looks like that piece is just left on pre-right. Then comes rook takes d7, and if that queen takes, then this leads to mate because of queen takes f6, king h5, g4, king h4, and queen h6 checkmate. And this is a thing that kind of is recurring even with the f5 variation, which was actually played in the game. Here Tal just took the pawn on f5, and after queen takes f5, boom, bishop takes e6, and it's the same basic idea. I mean, if queen takes e6, then rook takes d7, and that rook is immune basically, because if you take, then the same idea follows through again, and it's made on h4. Okay, so that was another game by Tal, the magician from Riga, as they called him. This was Ramon Martinez delivering another hopefully enjoyable game. If you like these videos, please subscribe and give it a like, and let me know if you would like to see more. I mean, I enjoy doing these videos. I love chess, like I said in the previous video, and hopefully you guys enjoy this content as well. And yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time.